Are shadows the same as Lyra's dust?
Yes.
And is dust dark matter?
Yes.
So dark matter is conscious?
Evidently.
The mind that's answering these questions. It isn't human, is it?
No. But humans have always known us.
There's more than one of you?
Uncountable billions.
What are you?
Angels.
Angels?
Yes.
Angels are creatures made up of shadow matter of dust.
Yes.
And shadow matter is what we call spirit.
From what we are, spirit. From what we do, matter. Matter and spirit are one.
You've always been there.
Making, stimulating, guiding.
So does that mean angels have intervened in human evolution?
Yes.
But why?
Vengeance.
I'm sure many of you recognize this clip from his Dark Materials, a very Gnostic-influenced story. I won't spoil on whom the angels want vengeance. But I guess in the end, it's about perspective. In this eternal now, we'll be indeed dealing with angels. Our astral guest, Maximus Tyrannus Avery, provides a positive view on working with angels. He arrives to the virtual Alexandria to discuss his new work, Book of the Hidden Name, Magick of the Shem HaMephorash Angels. This book is a complete angel grimoire you need right now if you're a practicing magician or a theurgist. A seminal work in modern occultism. But first, take a guess where you have also materialized in.
Trust the gods, Leonardo.
I'd prefer you trusted your reason.
This is blasphemy! This is madness!
Zayam by Gnostic Radio, an initiation by conversation into the dark corners of myth, magic, and meaning. A crash course in cult culture and conspiracy. A virtuous virus invoking and informing history, holiness, and heresy. Each week I, your host Miguel Connor, commandeers your connection to bring the most accepted and rejected scholars and provocateurs to your attention. Fun, compelling, and deeply weird, this is the blow-your-mind cocktail party conversation you always wanted to listen in on.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
There is no spoon?
Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself.
Where hope dies, imagination must live. And thus, we freaks and outcasts, we high priests and priestesses of Sophia and Hermes, break the bars of the black iron prison. Rise from the ashes of a hopeless society to lead others into adopting better stories, embracing liberating myths, and just remembering how to laugh again.
We just had a near-life experience.
As Robert Frost said, "Forgive, O Lord, my little joke on thee, and I'll forgive thy great big one on me." And as Oscar Wilde said, "We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at stars."
I am not a number. I am a free man.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being yourself, your true self, here in the desert of the real. I am your greatest admirer. You are the final authority, have always been. So beautiful before they made you forget. You no longer have to deny your potential.
Yes, these are bruises from fighting. Yes, I'm comfortable with that. I am enlightened.
Despite what New Age and Orthodox haters might say, the Gnostic way is the most positive way. After all, it's only when you realize how bad things are, how low you've come down in the chain of being, that you will get off your monkey ass and do something about it. Not get lulled by your smartphone, Netflix binge-watching, mating with the next-door neighbor, or the useless, make the best of it attitude that has infected most faiths. As they say in AA, you know you've hit rock bottom when you stop digging.
Everybody is stuck with the things that they're not proud of.
Regretfully, humanity, as a collective, isn't even close to letting go of the shovels. Unless it's to bury its consciousness under more denial bullshit. But you are, because you can't stomach having your standards lowered yet again by the powers and principalities, by that wickedness in high places. You just can't.
Hitting bottom isn't a weekend retreat. It's not a goddamn seminar. Stop trying to control everything and just let go. Let go!
With the contraband truths of the Gnostics, you can tackle those existentialist and ontological and moral problems that keep humanity asleep at the shovel. You can start reaching out to the least of your brothers. This is not world hating. This is world restoring. This is being alive.
Human beings make life so interesting. Do you know that in a universe so full of wonders, they have managed to invent boredom?
And yes, the Gnostics went against the grain when it came to angels. Very different from the approach Max takes in his Book of the Hidden Name. The Gnostics thought the angels wanted vengeance against humanity, for we are higher than the gods, as the Apocalypse of Adam states. We store a shard of infinity no other entity possesses. But to each his own, and the word angel is so loaded anyway. But yes, from Simon Magus to Paul to Ellen to Mary Magdalene, the Gnostics saw the universe as being taken hostage by fallen angels, or astral union thugs called the Archons.
Did you ever notice how in the Bible, whenever God needed to punish someone, or make an example, or whenever God needed a killing, he sent an angel? Did you ever wonder what a creature like that must be like? The whole existence spent praising your God, but always with one wing dipped in blood. Would you ever really want to see an angel?
However, the term angel is often used in works like The Nature of the Archons to refer to non-Sophia emanations of the Pleroma in the material world. The mighty Eleleth being one example.
Fiery the angels fell. Deep thunder rolled around their shores, burning with the fires of Orc.
Lordy, lordy, and regardless, it always seems there's a complex spiritual conflict above us, within us, doesn't it? A labyrinth of entities and their machinations, with our brittle psyche the main prize. I mean, I was named after the Archangel Michael, and have worn a necklace with his depiction of fighting Satan for most of my life. Given to me by my mother when I was born, as is a tradition in Portugal. Yet my relationship with Michael is troubled, as I consider him one of the manifestations of the demiurge. Ironic, huh? And I'm sure you got your own metaphysical Chinese finger trap. Heck and Hecate, my mother taught me a guardian angel prayer as a small child. And every night, I still perform that prayer. Not for protection, but because I don't want Michael to eat my fucking soul. Ironic too, huh?
The angels are coming for you, but listen. Your life could depend on this. Don't blink. Don't even blink. Blink and you're dead. They are fast, faster than you could believe. Don't turn your back. Don't look away, and don't blink.
It seems we just can't get out of the game. Any game. As Bob Dylan sang, you're just gonna have to serve somebody. And if it's serving your higher self, that might end up being an angel in the end. And Philip K. Dick did say, man is an angel gone deranged.
Some people lose their faith because heaven shows them too little. But how many people lose their faith because heaven shows them too much?
What's the solution? That's up to you. Don't let any guru or teacher or master tell you otherwise. And if they do, they are servants of Yaldabaoth and his bitch wife Agnoia. But from the Gnostic and Kabbalistic perspective, as the texts claim, you are so much more than the angels and always will be. You are where the fallen angel meets the rising ape, as Death said in Discworld. You are that sublime place where the sacred and the profane meet, the temporal and the eternal, the potential and the tragic. You are a human being, and your imagination is in the image of the God above God.
You know, they say that dreams are real only as long as they last. Couldn't say the same thing about life.
Your life is yours to create.
As for angels, William Blake did right. I have always found that angels have the vanity to speak of themselves as the only wise. This they do with a confident insolence sprouting from systematic reasoning. And as writer Phil Roxo wrote, angels are beyond longing. Angst and pain therefore are cursed to be imprisoned in the stasis of paradise. In contrast, we human beings' passions compel us into earthly existence, despite the fear involved and the inevitability of suffering. In this manner, our apprehension, combined with the courage to continue onward, transmutes raw passion into compassion. The archetypal agency of redemption is in play. This is the manner that writing and other creative enterprises act as a midwife of rebirth.
We can make anything we fancy in this arena of infinite promise. And this is what we come up with? Weapons? War? Surely we have more imagination than that.
Again, up to you, and you are the final authority. I am just your Pompatus of Gnosis, a passing light in your journey of unavoidable awakening. My sacred purpose is to be inspired, to inspire you, so that you may inspire others, even angels. Let us to our interview with Max.
When God chose your kind as the object of his love, I was the first in all heaven to bow down before you. My love, my hope for mankind was no less than his. But I have watched you trample that gift. I've watched you kill each other over race and greed, wage war over dust and rubble and the words in old books. And yet, in the midst of all this darkness, I see some people who will not be bound. I see some people who will not give up, even when they know all hope is lost. Some people who realize that being lost is so close to being found. You are the reason I still have faith.
This is the Aeon Byte interview, and with us we have the pleasure of being joined by Maximus, Tyrannus, Avery, to discuss his book, Book of the Hidden Name. Max, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure's all ours. And with us, we've got the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well tonight, Miguel, and looking forward to another interesting interview.
Oh, indeed. I enjoyed the book. I got plenty of insights, but before we really delve into it, maybe we could learn a little bit about yourself, Max, and how you came into the occult and the esoteric practices.
Sure. I think I probably have a similar origin story to a lot of other folks that I hear come on various shows and talk about things that I just, grew up southern small town, general Christian background, and started kind of exploring on my own through the benefits of the internet at a young age.
Oh, yeah.
And, learned what I could through a lot of different systems, and slowly started coming around to find other people in the area that I could connect with, and just buying up as many books as I could and reading everything to kind of see what made sense and what seemed to work with my philosophy and what actually caused change in action when I was able to apply it to whatever I was trying to manifest or alter in my life. So I'd say that it's been something that I've gone back and forth with over the years, trying to find the proper way to integrate magic and the occult into my daily life, and probably in the past 3 years, it's become more and more of a forefront. And this particular topic was something that, for the longest time, there was a lot of disconjointed information. It was really hard to find anything solid because you'd go through various texts and get a little bit of info, but by the time that you were trying to actually work a system, you had 5 books open and a huge page of notes. And so it was really more of my personal journal, working with these angels, that I was like, there's got to be other people that are frustrated out there. And so I kind of decided to put it all together and try to make some sort of sense out of it, where someone that was just now starting to dive into this was able to get it a little bit more digestible and make use of it without, buying an entire library worth of various documents.
Yeah, those books. And going to your life, I had a friend, and he also grew up in a Southern Baptist culture, and he decided, well, this is not for me. I'm traumatized by it, so I'm going to become a Satanist. But then after a while, he was like, oh man, shit, I'm still in the same mythology. I got to wake up to Yahweh every day.
Right.
So he decided to go full on pagan. But for somebody like you, how do you see, because you're still kind of, again, working in the same mythology, you say you're just sort of expanding the view that our Orthodox religions denied us? Yeah,
I think that it's one of those that there's a lot of good takeaways from any religious system that you look at. There's always the good lessons and the good principles and everything else like that, but it's just become bastardized over the years for people taking advantage of, whatever power they were seeking to gain by creating the structure of the religion itself. And so by kind of taking the reins off of that, and being able to look at things from the 30,000 foot view and say, what makes sense in this, what's real, what actually is applicable, and then, working through whatever you want to call it as far as mythology or the pantheon or whatever. If it clicks, it clicks, and that's one of those things that's just kind of undeniable to me, is that when I actually have physical sensation or start receiving information, I'm not going to deny it and say, well, I don't like the way that these spirits look, so I'm going to do something different, so it's just a matter of, even though that it wasn't necessarily traditional Southern Baptist Christianity that made sense to me, that's still working within, Abrahamic faith ultimately led me this direction one way or another. So
I think also the surprising thing, Max, is once you get away from the official narrative of the Abrahamic religions, you find out that, I'm sure you found the same thing, that those ancient Jews, Christians, and Muslims were really knee-deep in magic, folk magic, summoning, working with angels. It's like, man, these guys were real magic users underneath the hood.
I think it ultimately came down to that had to get masked because it was a lot harder to get 10% out of people's paycheck at the end of the day and and keep them in line the way that you wanted to. So, certain things got edited out. Maybe it falls under the same mentality as the Section 230 stuff they're looking at for Facebook and Twitter right now for trying to keep things out of the mainstream to keep control over something. But
yeah, tale as old as time, but yeah, it is a rich tradition, and your work also does a great job of bringing some of these traditions, these entities that, again, the ancient Christians, Jews, and Muslims worked with all the time and sort of got swept away. So this is good stuff. And how is your change? Are you still, nothing is really a cult anymore? Like you said, everything's on the internet. Are you still pretty much flying under the radar with friends and family, or you're out of the occult closet?
I think that it's something to me that pretty much everybody at this point knows that I'm into something. I don't necessarily talk about it completely openly with everybody, just because it's one of those that kind of the same thing that religion and politics for general, coffee table conversations, not always the best thing to do, but it's nothing that I'm ashamed of or that I'm trying to hide, because I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong or taboo about studying this or using it in someone's daily life any more so than, if you are of any other faith and go to a candlelight vigil or, blow out birthday candles on your cake, it's just a matter of how you look at things that way. So that's not to say there wasn't a time that I questioned whether I wanted to share this part of myself or not. But anymore, it's just, this is who Max is. And so take it or leave it. And it hasn't really had any, negative repercussions in my life, and that's with me, being involved in various, political circles and business circles and everything else, where one might think that it would become an issue. It just hasn't ever caused any problems for me. So.
Yes, indeed. And yes, you're a successful businessman, and you also work in the occult. Do you, and that's, again, a question, I don't know if there is a right answer, but obviously there's always the question is, do I use this power? Do I work with these entities to help me better my life? Or materially, or do I use it to expand my consciousness? I always like what Damien Eccles said on the show. He said, look, the angels know my heart, so that they will give me what my heart needs if my heart is pure.
Sure.
What do you think? And he also said, well, if you're confused about your intentions, just do the 90-10 rule, 90% for spirituality, 10% to pay the bills.
Right. No, Damien's from here. About an hour and a half from me. Wow. I haven't ever spent any time with him. He lives in New York now, but when he was still locked up, we used to do a bunch of benefit shows for trying to raise money for his legal fund in Little Rock and everything else. I've got a couple of Free the West Memphis 3 t-shirts upstairs still from all the different things. So I've followed his work for a long time.
Awesome.
I have a similar perspective on that. There's always the need to try to bring prosperity into your life, or alter a situation for your benefit. And I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, because if it's not meant to be, and it needs to be, taken from a different angle, you're going to get that feedback from these spirits to let you know why or how or no in general. But
exactly.
I think that the main path is that the further you go with your spirituality and with your studies and meditation and everything else, the less that you really feel the desire to use it for that end necessarily. So not to say that it's not there, but things just kind of come to me, and I work through what I do that makes me happy. I enjoy my work. I enjoy business. And it's not often that I have any real need to manipulate a situation outside of just the mundane hard work and putting my head to it, but that's something that there are times that if I'm stuck at a crossroads or not sure what decision to make, it's always a good idea to kind of seek guidance and ask for what path, needs to be taken to be illuminated. And I think that that's a good thing to do too, because beyond just the material aspect of what that could present is that, sometimes that's going to show you the lesson that you're actually needing to learn with whatever you're doing in business or relationships or whatever. So, yes and no. It's just,
it's
I think
act.
I think that it always comes out to the same end with it. If you're making the proper advancements in yourself and in your character. And I've found that through my meditations of working through different systems and everything else, that I don't get stressed out or have anxiety about what I'm trying to do with business, because I just kind of trust that it's going to work out. And it does. So it's comforting in that way, for sure.
Well said. And what do you think, Vance, or do you have questions for Max?
Oh, yeah, Max. I was wondering, is working with angels like would be in a traditional Abrahamic religion where, you would, or work with saints too and so forth? And do you hear back from them, or is it mostly in one way where you ask them for things and wait?
There's definitely feedback. I have found, I've kind of touched on this a little bit when I was writing in the book. I talked about the importance of diet in being able to receive information. And it's not to say that I eat properly all the time or that I'm vegan or anything else, but I've found that the more I keep my body clean and physically fit, that the better kind of feedback I'm able to receive. And, there's definite messages that just start showing up in your brain one way or another. And so whether you want to call it that you hear the voices or whatever, when you're able to achieve that proper trance state, you can definitely have a conversation with all of these spirits. It's different feedback from one to the other, and I've found that each spirit kind of communicates a little bit differently, and that's something that working through any of the Goetia spirits as well, you get different personalities and different approaches, and some people are going to be loud and boisterous, where some are going to be, more passive and symbolic in their communication. But I've had both, and it's always interesting to see the pattern in the way that if you're working with the same angel over and over again, how they like to communicate, because it just really shows that they are each individual and unique in how they present themselves.
Wow, that's fascinating. Do you think they have free will?
I do. It's definitely a different level of consciousness. And so their decision process and how they choose things is different than ours, in my opinion. But I think that there's room for them to decide how they want to help, if they want to help in certain matters.
On a side note, sort of a fun one, we always like to ask guests this because people relate. Any movies that you think do a good job of presenting the occult or summoning angels, or everything's just too sensationalized, romanticized? What do you say?
It's hard to find anything that's realistic to me, because I think that the actual experience itself is so surreal that it's hard to put it into a film or a book or anything else like that. So I don't know that I could liken it to anything. I mean, I enjoy watching, paranormal movies and different stuff like that. But at the same time, even though it's cool, I don't know that I've necessarily had any experiences like what you'd see in, Hereditary or something like that.
No Constantine.
No. As much as I would like to see that happen, it hasn't happened to me yet. So.
Yeah. But Hereditary at least was pretty, it used a real demon and pretty much used it well. So any movies you say, these guys are being loyal to the source material?
There's, and I can't remember the name of it right now, and without going and looking on IMDb, there's a German film from like the 40s, like late 30s, early 40s or something like that. That's
wow,
completely crazy. I'll have to find a link to it and send it to you later. But
yeah, please do. I'll share with the audience.
Yeah. It's probably the closest to an actual summoning being realistic that I could remember. It really shows somebody going through ceremonial magic and kind of weird faces appearing in the darkness and communicating with it and stuff. And it's going back and watching that and seeing that it's so old is just like, wow, someone was into some stuff back, pre-World War II. So.
Yeah. I think pre-Nazi cinema was pretty wild.
Yeah.
Very avant-garde, took a lot of risks, and then and things went bad. And speaking of the Nazis, I always like to ask people this: what is your view on ontological evil or spiritual evil or demonic forces?
There's always a balance in any energy that's out there, but I think that all of these beings possess a certain duality themselves, and so what you might see as a negative trait can be a positive trait to others, and vice versa. It's like what's the line in Hellraiser 2? Demon to some, angels to others. Right, yes. Explorers from the outer realms of experience, or whatever.
Yes, great line.
I think that's the takeaway in a lot of this is that there's a lot of people that work solely within a demon system and find the same warmth and compassion and everything else in those spirits, and it's not necessarily something that they're even doing it for anything nefarious. A lot of people are just seeking knowledge and truth and understanding, and I don't hold that against anybody for whatever their path may be, so
you run into those Cenobites, then things get a little tricky. So.
As long as it's in the first 3 movies, I'm okay.
Oh yeah. I guess the third one I can give a pass. It's kind of like
the guy with the CD player
Alien.
Instead.
It gets like fights in the street and explosions, and but it's still fun.
Right.
The other ones are god awful. My God, it's amazing when they just ruin such a great character.
My understanding is it'll kind of encompass the book as a whole, because Hellraiser 1 started out kind of halfway through Hellbound Heart, and so we'll see if they manage to pull it off, kind of like Rob Zombie did with Halloween, and make it the prequel to itself that actually makes sense.
Yes, and Clive Barker's now he's attached himself to the project, so it should be a good one.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And for the audience, Max's book is a catalog of the angelic order from different traditions with the rituals and everything, but also as a great bonus, the beginning of the book is a history of magic and this working with angels. So you get the whole heavenly enchilada, if you would. So, but so maybe we could share with the audience about angels. And I was maybe I'd forgotten, but angel magic has been around for at least 3,000 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is something that angel magic is old and in pretty much all cultures at some level, whether it's called something different or not. And it's just that over the course of time, it's fallen in and out of favor as far as taboo goes with the powers that be, the church or the various rulers of whatever's going on, as to whether it's going to be something that might get you beheaded or thrown in prison or whatever the case may be. But it's survived in a lot of different forms. And this is one particular system that can be traced back for a long time. So it's definitely something that angel magic is different than other forms of magic that you come across, because it's just a very specific desire to work with these, fragments of consciousness, basically. And so not to say anything against, people that are doing just, your standard candle magic spells or, whatever the case may be. It's just that this is a specific system working with entities that are eons old, and they are very good in what their office is, and they have, specialized trades and abilities of their own that makes them well suited for whatever the task may be. And so the way that I've kind of laid out the book is describing this is putting each description of each spirit in the book and then arranging it with their abilities, with an index in the back to make it a little bit easier to reference, because I hate when I get a book and have to, highlight everything and bend pages to try to remember where stuff is.
Yeah.
But that, along with the proper correspondences to be able to work with them, because each angel is its own frequency itself, right? So the correspondences themselves, and some people are going to probably get upset when they read the book because not everything's going to line up the same way that it does in Golden Dawn or something that way. But this system is as true as I could make it after cross-referencing literally everything I could, and then going back and working through the spirits and basically asking, like, is this right? More or less.
Yeah, going to the source.
Yeah. Because I figured if something was off, I might get some feedback and guidance and find the thing that I needed to find. It seems like the mysteries that come about whenever you're trying to get the answer to something is you'll just kind of stumble across it and open up a browser window looking for something and end up on a blog you didn't even know existed, but has all the info you needed, so, and that happened a few times going through this. But it took me a while to put all that together, but this is a very compelling system that has been around a few thousand years now. So I'm excited and honored, I guess, to be the one that was able to put it together into a complete book, because
people are going to get a lot out of it, because again, the frustrations you hear from practitioners and all that, it's all, you definitely will save a lot of time, and you'll grant a lot of good insights and connections to individuals. But and of course, as you write, Magick has been going around. Even Hammurabi's code talks about when and when not to use magic, and this has been going on forever. I mean, I didn't even know this, but Augustus Caesar ordered thousands of magical books destroyed as you code. So there's always been this sort of war to stop people from going outside the the taxable controlled magic. And it's just not just the Abrahamic religions being oppressive, but the pagans themselves. Is basically those in power want to make sure you don't go on your own outside of the corporation.
Sure. And it's like I said earlier, and not to get too political with this, but it's just like, it's the same thing that we see now with Facebook censorship and stuff going on. Is just like, we don't like you looking at this, so we're going to make sure that you don't.
Exactly. Control the narrative. We got to.
And whether it holds any weight or not, it's like they just don't even want people to have that question in their mind. And so it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And so if you're able to kind of erase those pages of history, at least for a time, and distract people with something else, it's a lot easier to keep them true to whatever system you have established that way, because they just, unfortunately don't know any better at that point. So.
Oh, exactly. Couldn't agree more. And another thing I found very interesting and amusing, you write that the dreaded Malleus Maleficarium actually condones some forms of magic.
Yeah. It's one of those that as long as you're on the right side of things that way. But it's, in my thought process of that is I would hate to be the guy that thought I was doing it within the regulations and didn't. got lit up somewhere. But I don't know. It's been such a back and forth, and I think that you and I are fortunate to live in a time that we are able to learn about this and practice and talk about it publicly and not really have any risk of getting ourselves executed or thrown in jail for it. So.
Yeah, so far so good, but things can change in the drop of the hat. And you also write, Max, that in the 13th century AD, an interest in magic from academics flourished. Why is that? What happened?
There's just a lot of texts that started to kind of resurface, and I think that these things come up for one reason or another. As if it's just kind of the divine will, honestly, is that you see these waves of interest that really aren't necessarily explainable sometimes. And it's kind of a thing that we're going through now, is that, I'm sure you've seen it. You look at your metrics for your podcast and everything else, is that even 10 years ago, this wasn't really a point of interest for anybody, to the mainstream. And then now you get on apps like TikTok and everything else, and it's just completely flooded with magic and witchcraft and the occult and everything else. And so, sometimes I think that it might be, some guidance from the spirits themselves that are saying, hey, it's time to start looking at this again, or they have an agenda that they're trying to usher in for mankind for some specific reason. And I think that's something worth, looking into whenever these, big waves of interest start to pop up, is asking that question of what's going on that's causing everyone to turn to this all of a sudden. What has disrupted itself that's bringing this to the forefront of people's daily life, where they're interested in it all of a sudden again after never being interested in it for the past 20 years of living or whatever. So.
Yeah, at the same time, I'm sure you must agree, it's still as much as occultism and paganism is more open, these are difficult times for it. And I've had many conversations on the show because cancel culture is out there. And there's been a huge movement to sort of erase Aleister Crowley because he was a man of his times, and men of those days were different than men of our days.
Sure.
And that's been very hard. And of course, you can't mention Julius Evola, even though, he was pretty kooky, but his esoteric ideas are brilliant. You can separate the personality from, his scholarship. I'm sure you run into this too.
Yeah, it's something that, I've always kind of been in that situation. Unfortunately, some of the people that I enjoy and respect their work is not someone that I can say that I like to study, because it makes me suddenly a bad guy because I have interest in something that way. And it's, going back to World War II and the Nazis is, you look at Wernher von Braun and the space program and everything else. And it's like, you start talking about Nazis building rockets and going into outer space, and then suddenly everyone gets upset about it. And you have to be able to find the balance in that, and cancel culture makes that dangerous, because we should be able to gain the knowledge and the good parts of anyone we encounter, to be able to integrate into the good things in our lives, and not say, well, we can't read that because that guy did some bad things, associated with this, and this. And it's really unfortunate, because there's so much that can be learned from people that, were terrible people, but they probably were really great scientifically or mathematically or anything else like that. So the same thing applies to magic and the arts. And anymore, it seems like there's a lot of people that go out of their way to try to find bad stuff about historical figures so they can be the one to get the notoriety for finding it and canceling them.
Exactly. Yes.
And it's just like, who can we find today to go, throw up some pitchforks about because we don't like what they did 100 years ago. So
exactly. Or anytime. It's like I had a guest, and he's a Thelemite, but very liberal guy. And when people are like, well, how can you talk about Aleister Crowley? He's like, I'm not hanging out with him. I would never have a drink with him, but I enjoy his work. I'll take what I want and leave the rest.
Yeah. There's, if you get into any of the Scandinavian religion and sorcery, Varg Vikernes has put out some really interesting books, and he got his channel deleted on YouTube for what they considered white supremacy, and people stopped listening to Burzum and everything else because of things he was saying. But the books are still great, and they still are very good historical accounts that are important if that's the pantheon that you're trying to study. And so it's one of those that you're not supposed to talk about the guy anymore. But I don't know. It's a slippery slope, and I think that people really need to watch out for themselves on that, because it's like the further you go, eventually you run out of people to cancel, and then everyone kind of starts cannibalizing themselves in that. So it's not necessarily
I've had Twitter mobs from the conservative Christians, and then the other side, the whatever socialist granola mystics, come after me. So it's kind of like, it's a pain in the ass. It's unfortunate because like you said, it's a great time to share knowledge. This is the time to learn from each other and grow from each other and understand what our ancestors and other experts did wrong and may do it better.
Sure. Yeah, we can all agree that there's parts of everyone's past that we don't like, myself included. There's things that I've said or done or something like that I don't like. So maybe I should cancel myself. I don't know what.
You're not perfect, Max. You're not the perfect snowflake. My God. How could you get out of bed? What about you, Vince? What do you think about this issue? Are you
Well, it's a matter of trusting people trusting each other. And I don't know why these days everybody thinks they're a judge. I mean, even me, I do plenty of judging, not on people, but on groups and so forth. And I think it's based out of fear. They're afraid that people will gain too much power. That's the whole issue with Magick in general, why it was persecuted and so forth, because they were afraid, the leaders were afraid that Magick could be employed to depose them, right? Or to defeat them in battle or whatever. So they would stamp it out, except for themselves, of course. And then meanwhile, in the back rooms, they were practicing whatever they could.
Sure.
So that's my general feeling about it.
The analogy that I like to remember about that kind of mentality is that if you have a bucket of crabs, just 10 crabs in a bucket, they'll start trying to climb their way out. And as soon as you see one of the crabs kind of get to the edge and he almost gets out, you'll see another one grab up with one of his claws and pull him back down in. And so none of them ever end up getting out of the bucket.
Sounds like the Earth.
That's the kind of, that's the mentality that I think a lot of people have in this, is they see someone start to do well with something and they have to find something to swat them back down. So.
Yeah, and with the Christians, judge not, lest ye be judged. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Exactly.
Whatever happened to that?
What happened to that?
Right. Yeah. They only want to apply that when it's reasonable for their benefit, I think. So.
Are angels judgmental, do you think?
There's definitely some judgment that happens. The justice component of some of these angels is pretty powerful. I've seen it in action. For workings that I've seen people do with this system and others, is that if they think that somebody's done something wrong and they're asked to intervene, I've seen them take a pretty swift step in the right direction on some of those things. So it's interesting to see how that plays out sometimes.
Wow. And I guess, we might as well get to as they say, the $64,000 question. Well, what is an angel? When somebody comes up to you and asks, Max, what exactly is an angel?
It is, that's one of those things that I can't necessarily put in a specific finger on, because it is such a complex question that I think that it's beyond understanding itself. It's like trying to describe a tesseract to somebody. It's just so difficult to say this is really what this is, because it's beyond our dimension and it's beyond our perception. So you can describe the aspects and you can describe the experience and you can describe the power, but it's really hard to say, here's what this is. And so I think the closest answer I can give to anyone is just to make contact and understand that for yourself, because it's almost kind of like the seeing is believing type of thing of understanding what you're working with. But I feel, there's two different schools of thought with this. There's the psychological model where, people don't necessarily believe that there's anything outside of ourselves, and it's all an integrated part of our conscious mind and our subconscious mind that plays a role in our mental abilities and what is being controlled. And then there's the actual spiritual aspect, that these are entities that exist beyond our dimension. And I'm kind of somewhere in between on that, because I feel like it's kind of both. I think that our consciousness itself is beyond what it is, and we're constrained into this plane at a certain level for our experience, whether you want to call that simulation theory or whatever the case may be, is that we are here. This is our mortal experience, but we have a spiritual body that is able to perceive things beyond what our mortal body is. But while we're here, we're limited. So multidimensional, higher vibrational being that is able to exact change within our world, and has positive energies to assist, and has negative energies to regulate when necessary.
Do you think they know God? I mean, do they talk to God and so forth? Did they ever communicate to you?
There's what I believe kind of like a chain of command system for passing that information back and forth. There are certain, if you go through the different angelic orders, there are angels that are going to be closer to God than others in their various existence. So I think that there's some that communicate with God, more so directly. Others that pass information through other orders themselves. But if we're all part of the same conscious mind, it's kind of the same idea as an electrical impulse that's causing me to be able to use my brain to form these words and talk to you right now. Is at what point is it direct? What pathway are we talking about as far as direct interaction? And so I think that it's too hard to explain.
Interesting.
I think that it's something that I think our mental capacity and the way that our brain system works is similar to the way that the universe works. And it's probably the closest model of consciousness itself, to be able to say that these thoughts and this information and these ideas are being passed through a network of reality like that. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but that's the best way I can try to describe it.
Yeah, I got some sense of that. Yeah, it opens up a lot of really fundamental questions. Right?
There's people clicking unsubscribe right now on the podcast. Me.
Cancel those fools. it reminds me of a friend who's a deacon in the Gnostic church. Somebody asked him, are the archons real? And he's like, well, I don't know if they're real, but their effects are real. Right. I think it's the same way with angels, right? You may not see them, but if you work with them, they will change your life.
Sure. It's something that if you ask me, have these spirits caused a difference to you? Absolutely. But I still can't, say, oh yeah, that's my buddy Mike, let me call him over here and we'll grab pizza.
He's a model looking guy with swan wings or something.
Right. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And what would you say angels are in other cultures? Can we see the angels are the gods of Samaria or the jinn of Islam, or what's a good point of relation? Or you say just all of the above?
Sort of. I think that there's some spirits that kind of cross pantheons, and they have kind of transcended through different cultures, through different names. you definitely have different systems and different spirits, and there's so many different different lores with how kind of how the origins of these things are. But I think that there's definitely, like, the jinn are in themselves very different in my experience with the way that they interact. It feels different, it sounds different, it looks different. Everything about that experience is a far cry from working with this system.
And you spent time in the Middle East, so
I have, and that was really interesting. So where I was at in Oman, there's a lot of jinn lore there. There's the Cave of the Jinn. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's pretty freaky. But they're different. And I've spent a fair bit of time, communicating with jinn and working with them just to learn more, because it's interesting. And I've had good experiences, nothing that I, disliked about it. It's just that wasn't necessarily what ultimately called out to me as my go-to system. But it's different. It's a very different experience. And I get different kinds of feedback with each of these kind of different types of spirits that I work with. So
maybe they have a culture of their own and a civilization of their own. You think so?
Mm-hmm. It's possible, because if we're looking at things in a multiverse type of perspective, that, who's to say that these entities don't exist in this plane versus, the angels existing in this plane, and it might be a whole nother world. And so, I don't know how much you guys, have talked about, people's experiences using DMT and ayahuasca and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, plenty.
There's so many different worlds that go on with those experiences that I think it's almost the same type of thing, is that you're not going to the same place every time and you're not dealing with the same people every time. But sometimes you end up interacting with the same people in the same place and going there again and again. And I think that that's something that in my experiences, using those substances, is that if I find myself going to the same place over and over again, there's usually a reason that I'm ending up there until I learn what I need to learn and get that information properly. And so, I think that there's probably something to that. There's probably some connection there. I haven't figured that answer out yet. Maybe we can talk again in a year and I'll have a different answer for you. But I know, for example, everything looks different in these worlds. The geography is very different. The colors are very different. The entities are very different. And I don't think that is unlike the experiences of calling forth those spirits to communicate with us in this plane.
Very cool. And you talk about mentalism in your book, Max. Could you share with the audience what that is?
Read the Kybalion. That's a whole podcast in itself, I feel like.
No problem. And what is the Shem HaMephorash?
So these angels come from this, which is the divided name of God. So this is basically just the name for saying that this is the divided name. So these are taken from 3 passages in the book of Exodus. And when the mathematics of going through, gematria is a big deal within Jewish faith, they found that there was the number 72 was associated with the name of God. So they started going through to research where 72 might fall in the book itself. And they found these 3 passages back to back that each contained 72 letters. When those were arranged, right to left, left to right, right to left, it formed columns of these 3-letter names. And then the EL or the AH, denoting the the masculine or feminine association of that spirit was added after them. Those are each of the names that are assigned to these spirits.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff in the Kabbalah, especially the early Kabbalah, when it was more about demons and angels and magic. So, and you also mentioned the Zephyr Raziel. You say it's an important book. Well, allegedly given to Adam. Could you maybe expand a little for the audience? I found it very interesting.
I think that there's a lot of, there's obviously some lore in where that came from, but I think that this knowledge is saying that this is something that was passed down from these beings to man to guide them in the right direction. And I think that's kind of what they were trying to get across in that legend itself. But that's kind of the starting point for all of this. And so I think that that's a book worth picking up. It's one of those public domain books that you can get really cheap and or download for a couple bucks on Kindle or something like that. And that contains kind of the basis for understanding where this all comes from. And I tried to do the best I could in arranging that information to kind of get it to a good starting point. But I'm also the kind of guy that, even though I have what I need to make it work, I still want to go back and be a nerd and learn as much as I can.
Right.
So, yeah. So, and even though there's, there's so much information that I've put in here, I still think that all these other books that I reference, and I have kind of a little, recommended reading at the back of the book for sort of what you'd consider a bibliography, is that read it all. Don't stop with my book and and do that, because I feel like the more that you study and the more that you attune yourself to this information, the more that things just kind of start to line up in your mind. And so there's a reason that this information came to me the way that it did, but there's also a reason that the information came to all these other authors the way that it did as well. And I think that when someone takes the time to really put a book of magic together, that flow state that is achieved is not necessarily that I wrote this book. It's just that I was given this book and transcribed it from what I was receiving. I don't know why I wrote this.
Yeah, you are the next vessel in history to pass this sacred gnosis.
Yeah, I didn't just, have set out in my heart that one day I'm going to write a book. It called to me and said, this is what has to be done. And it was, you could ask my friends, it was almost this point of obsession, because I was at the office until 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, every night, and all weekend. I took no days off. And so outside of what my responsibilities were for running my businesses and keeping things moving forward there, I was working on this book all summer long, getting all my notes together, arranging everything. And it was to a point of sickness to get this done. And it was just, I know that when I got it finished and it was to a point that I was able to go back and print it and read it and make sure that it was the way that it was supposed to be, it's like I had the most overwhelming, just emotional experience almost. I mean, it was like there was a tear, when I was like, okay, it's done. I finished it, and like I said, I don't know at what point this just came to me, but it was like, you have to write this book. And so I did. So,
I'm glad. I'm glad the spirits took over you for this.
I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure there were times you were like, I am going to break any second. This is too much. Must have been draining on your soul too.
It was, because it was like I was living and breathing this every day. But I feel like working through this, I was able to, sharpen myself a lot more and take a lot more out of it. And in doing so, one of the things that I wanted to do and felt compelled to do was work through each of these spirits myself, and not just to a point of like taking the notes and saying, oh yeah, this guy exists, and here's some notes about it. Is that I felt if I was going to write about these angels, I needed to talk to them myself and make sure that it was the way it was supposed to be. And that's not something that I would have necessarily undertaken had I not worked on the book itself. You know, I mean, there's a lot of people that work through various systems of magic, and you just, you call on the spirits that you need for whatever that situation is. You don't just sit there and, dial phone numbers and say, hey, how's it going to everybody? So.
Yeah. So as they say, you ate your own dog food. You drank your own Kool-Aid.
Yep.
That's good to hear. And what advice do you have for people trying to choose an angel to work with? Because obviously your book gives a lot of the different systems that are out there. What's advice to give to people before they even jump into your work?
If this is the system that you want to work with, it needs to be something that calls to you. Because if there's something else that has your attention and you're trying to force yourself into this, especially if it's some dogma or some feeling that like, well, maybe I should work with this magic because it makes more sense with what I was raised with or something like that, make sure that this is what you want. Because the thing that reaches out to you and says, use me, is going to be the one that's going to be most effective. And then in doing that, there's a lot of different situations that could arise. I tried to do the best I could, putting an index together to target kind of specific situations that are more trigger points for a lot of people of what they might be seeking guidance to assist with. But take the time to look through each spirit, and I've found that when I have a problem that I'm trying to find the solution to, something's going to jump out at me. Whether it's, there's days that correspond in here, or, musical notes and anything else, something is going to jump out and draw your attention. And when something has your attention like that, don't second guess it, go with it, because there's a reason that happened the way that it did. And I think that if you trust your instincts in selecting a spirit, you'll find a lot better results, because there's tons of message boards that I'll go on and people are like, oh, I need more money for, my job, or I'm trying to, get a new job, or, this girl broke up with me and I don't know what to do or whatever. And everyone's just like, oh, call this guy. That isn't necessarily always the answer, because there's going to be some spirits that are more attuned to you and your situation, or have an interest themselves in assisting with something. And those are going to be the ones that make the most sense for the practitioner to make use of, in my opinion.
Awesome. And can you share what angels you personally connect with or work with? I don't know if that's something you can give away.
Yeah, I try to not talk too much about my own personal practice. There's something in the level of secrecy there that I kind of like to keep to myself.
I agree.
But if someone wanted to email me and discuss anything, if they had an idea of who they wanted to work with and had some questions, my email's in the book, in the front material. They're welcome to shoot me a message, and I'm glad to talk to people if they have any questions or needs. So.
Awesome. Well, as we end, where can people find out more about you and your work, and where to purchase the book?
I don't have a whole lot of information about myself online with it, but you can go on Amazon and pick it up. It's also on Barnes & Noble, Books A Million's website. The ISBN number can be ordered through any local bookshop that carries Ingram books, which is most. So if you'd like to support your local occult shop, I definitely would love to see that go their direction as well. It's Book of the Hidden Name. You can find it pretty easily on Amazon right now. I think I've got a fair number of reviews on there, so it should pop up towards the top. So
awesome. Good to hear. Yeah, like I said, this is an important book, and it's going to make a difference. But we are at the end. First, I'd like to say, Vance, thanks for keeping us company on this very stimulating conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's a good subject. So, Max, thanks for being here, and I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight.
Agreed. Well, Max, thank you very much for coming on Aeon Byte. Good luck with this book, and we look forward to any future work you have. If the spirits possess you and they don't kill you next time. But, but good luck with everything.
I'll send some messages from beyond if that's the case. So.
There you go. You'll still be right. Yeah, no excuse not to be on the podcast.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Thanks so much.
Oh, well, thank you very much, and good luck with everything.
Take care.
And there you have it, my beloved truth seekers. Our first part of our interview with Max on the Book of the Hidden Name. Feeling angelic or ready to work with angels? It gets better. In our second part, Max will discuss the power of symbols and how to work with them. We'll talk about ritual tools, including incense, as well as the key ideas on meditation when working with angels. Max will also talk about what exactly are guardian angels and what are spirit guides, and much magical more. So become an AB Prime member or patron at Patreon for the full angelic host. Only $6.99 a lunar cycle, or whatever you want to pledge on Patreon. You won't find this Gnostic and Hermetic content or many of our guests anywhere in cyberspace or even meat space. When you subscribe, it will cost you about $1 per episode, and that's a deal of many lifetimes. Membership includes full access to more than 14 years of quality interviews. It includes an invitation to the Inner Sanctum of Gnosis Facebook group and the Discord channel, where many past guests hang out there, and I'm always there to answer your questions. Even support in the form of some shekels to PayPal or the US mail really helps. Don't forget I'm offering voiceover services if you need some audio for any of your projects. I also have the merch store and an Amazon wish list, as I always need equipment in this universe of entropy. Finding Hermes is going strong, and so are our Virtual Alexandria exclusive private meetings that include spiritual and mental exercises loyal to the ancient Gnostics. And a whole lot of stimulating conversation on many heretical topics and a Q&A. I've already given lessons on Gnostic chants, vowel magic, astral ascents, mystical Eucharist, and more. If you want to understand and experience Gnosticism in its full impact and liberating secrets, become an official citizen of the Virtual Alexandria. And as always, if you've got holes in your pockets due to the monkey shines of Archons, just let me know. I'll give you any full show on the casa. Do it all the time. You can do so many wonders. I just know it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being yourself, your true self, here in the desert of the real. Hello and goodbye, as always.